Hello, namaste, and welcome to another episode of the Khushbu Vet Show. Well, my objective is to talk about the elephant in the room. That is, topics that constantly get neglected and pushed under the carpet, and by most of us, and almost all the time. Along with my guests, my objective is to create an open platform where all kind of views are welcomed, each opinion is respected, and most importantly, we discuss all kind of topics very freely. Well, today's topic is very unique. Why? Because at least this is something that I wasn't aware of until I met my guest. Well, I have been one of those people who has possibly tried all kind of diets possible in this world. Only the healthy ones, thankfully, not the most weird ones, but yes, I have done that. So when I actually came across her and I got to know there is something called as the anti-diet approach, I was wondering what exactly is this? And then I thought, why not invite her on our episode, on our podcast, and get more and more people to know about her program? And this is something really unique and interesting. And I would like all my viewers and listeners to know about this. So today's topic is all about what is the anti diet approach? How does it help in weight loss? And the whole concept around food freedom. How do you feel peaceful in your mind while you're following this process and thereby help nourish your body, mind, and soul? So, people, I cannot wait to invite my guest. My guest is nobody else but Andrea Heyman. Well, Andrea has over 25 years of experience as a registered dietitian. She specializes in weight management and currently works in Baltimore, MD. In addition, she runs Adventures in Feeding My Farm, a podcast and an online program which focuses on providing simple anti-diet approach to weight loss and food freedom, managing nutrition needs for the entire family members and promoting wellness to achieve health transformation. Andrea is also a mother of three kids, 19, 17, and 13. And trust me, she doesn't look like. But she is also very proud mother who really appreciates the fact that her family is actually following the entire process of eating healthy food and they are also adventure eaters. Well, she is also very confident that all of us can actually reach that level of health and wellness goal ourselves. So, welcome, Andrea. And I am so happy to welcome you to my show today.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm really honored to be invited here. And that was a really nice, generous introduction. Thank you.
You're totally worth it, Andrea. I mean, the more I have done my research about you and the entire approach, the more I am so excited to make sure all my audiences get to know it. So, I'm going to actually start with something very simple. How do you think the whole food and eating habits really shape our lives? Where does it really begin from?
So it seems like a simple question, but it's actually pretty complicated. So we eat for a few different reasons. We eat to nourish our bodies. We eat for socialization. We eat for celebration. And so there are lots of reasons there that kind of shape what our habits are. So if you think back, the way you nourish your body, that could be how you ate when you were a child, or even how you choose to feed yourself now. Socializing, think about that. For example, last night I went out to dinner with some friends, and because we were in a socializing environment, we were more apt to try a lot of different dishes and share and enjoy conversation and things like that.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. And then think about celebrations that you have. So for me, the first one that comes to my mind is a birthday celebration. And, we have cake and often ice cream, and those celebrations really shape how we are going to eat as well.
Well, I can tell you this, every month there is a birthday. There is a family member's birthday. There is some other friend's birthday. And I'm like planning, okay, next month I will do that diet. And then again, it gets postponed. And then again, it gets postponed. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. So all of those really shape how we end up eating, at various stages of our lives. And so oftentimes, because of all of these factors kind of contributing, we have like a lot of kind of subconscious views or kind of subconscious habits that we're not necessarily really aware of. And that really kind of forms what we do going forward.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, this is something I've been thinking a lot about, Andrea, and I think I wanted to know a little bit about what's your opinion about this. I have noticed that these traditional diets don't really work in terms of a long-lasting weight loss. So, what I mean by that is, I may try a diet today, and then I can see immediate results. But then again, if I go off the diet, I will see myself again putting on those pounds or those kilos. So, why does that happen?
Yeah, I call that the diet cycle. And actually, that's not a term that I made up, but the diet cycle really starts with kind of let's take the example of you. You decide that you're gonna start a new diet. And so if you can think of what's the most recent diet that you tried?
Well, actually, to be very frank with you, back in the day, I was much more on my weight than I am today. And hence, I tried the protein diet, the only vegetable diet, the GM diets, and all of that. And then came
Okay.
a time where I actually started doing a lifestyle change. So currently, I thankfully am not on a diet, but I am following a lifestyle. And that really has helped me a lot in the last few years.
Ah, that's fantastic. Okay, so just thinking about the time where you were on the, let's say, vegetable diet. It's very restrictive.
Oh,
Traditional
God.
diets restrict either a food group or maybe it restricts sugar or bread or carbohydrates. And that's hard to do. It's
Mhm.
very unnatural when we tell ourselves to, okay, Andrea, I'm not going to eat bread for 3 months. What do you think that I think about all the time?
Bread.
Eating bread. because because we're really like when we say don't eat bread, our minds don't differentiate between the phrase eating bread and don't eat bread. All we think of is bread, bread, bread.
Bread, bread, bread.
So we can't like overcome that. Like there's only so much will and willpower an individual has. So what happens is in the diet cycle, we've got kind of establishing that we're going to follow a diet, which involves some sort of restriction. In this case, it's restricting bread, we'll say. Then, we start out pretty strong because we're kind of like using that willpower, but it's pretty impossible to maintain that full term for a long
True,
term, right? It's not
true.
sustainable. So then we give up. And then once we give up, we feel pretty bad about ourselves. We're like, oh, not again. I couldn't do it. I'm a failure, blah, blah, blah. I'll never lose this weight. All of those kind of really bad thoughts, which, as you know, as an empowerment coach,
Yeah,
are not going to be successful in your quest to meet
absolutely.
your weight loss or your just your wellness goals in general. So traditional diets really play into that diet cycle,
Sure.
and we just kind of go around and around and around in various points of that. Um, and it's not successful. It's not sustainable, and it leaves us with a lot of bad feelings. So
Yeah.
often, the more diets we try, the worse and worse and worse we feel.
Yeah, I feel there's so much of disappointment then, the fact that we actually genuinely were interested in taking care of ourselves, but we went into a process which was not really a long term result oriented process. And as the objective or the result of it, in fact, we feel more disappointed in ourselves than actually what we should be feeling, which is grateful or thankful to the fact that we actually could take up that diet and we could lose that weight and so on and so forth. So I am really, really super excited to learn more about this entire anti diet approach. What is it? Please enlighten me about it.
Well, it is exactly what it says. It's not using those traditional diet approaches. Um, and I really focus on kind of getting to the core root of how you identify yourself and the beliefs that you have about yourself as an eater, whether you think you're a healthy eater or a not healthy eater, and also kind of the events in your life, often when you are very, very little, that establish those thoughts. So one of the things that I ask people that I work with is think back to when you were probably 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8, a pretty young child. Is there an event in your life that stands out as a time where either a family member, a friend, or something like that kind of made you feel badly or shamed you about either your foods that you're eating, how much you were eating, or your body? And literally everyone I work with who has kind of been in this long-term dieting cycle has an event from an early childhood that they can think of right away. So
Wow.
it is something that really, really stays with you. And if you can imagine, if you have this event that stays with you literally for decades, it plants the seed in you that, my body doesn't look good, or I eat too much. And it's usually like a friend or a family member, and they don't mean harm by it. But when you're that young and impressionable, you kind of instill this belief that, oh, I am this. I am an overeater. I have a round body, whatever it is. And that, with those core beliefs, we know that our beliefs drive how we feel and our emotions. And our emotions are really what's responsible for what leads to action. And then obviously the results that we have. Wow. So if we have this long-standing belief that I am an overeater from childhood event, a child, and even as an adult, you're then going to feel probably an emotion of just not very good about your self-image. And if you have that emotion, what actions are you going to take? You probably will end up overeating, and it becomes just sort of like a continual process. But once we can identify kind of that triggering moment, it's sort of like an aha moment for a lot of the folks that I have. And we can kind of start to reframe the beliefs that we have. Once we can do that, then we're going to drive different emotions and then different actions.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is completely something I did not think was going to come in. I was thinking there is another science or maths to it, and you're going to give me some, calculations of BMI and BMR, but this is completely different from what I had imagined it to be. So, okay, I think I can completely associate with what you're saying here, purely because, Andrea, like I mentioned to you, in my childhood, I think I remember myself going through this process where I used to eat a lot as a kid, and I think it happened during a time where I was changing my school and going to a new school, going through the pressure of finding your friends again, and this entire journey where you're not so ready about accepting the new changes that are happening in your life, and then you find comfort in food. I think I remember myself really going that route and taking food as my best friend at that point of time. I really do remember that. And I think it took me a lot of time to understand, accept that, and then possibly, get into a lifestyle change that I'm talking about today. But that's something that possibly, luckily, I went into. How can we actually help our viewers? How can they really understand that this could have been them, and what kind of, how can they identify this, and then what can they do as a practice to correct themselves?
Yeah, it's definitely a practice. I'm glad you're using that phrase.
Right.
Just kind of like what traditional diets teach us is that we want to do something very quick and fast. But what I really encourage with folks is that it is a practice. It is kind of retraining and reestablishing these beliefs that literally most people have had for decades.
Yeah.
So we have to like untrain the learning and the knowledge that we've had there for so long. And it doesn't happen overnight. So a lot of journaling exercises, I give folks, if we have kind of these negative beliefs and negative self-talk about ourselves, I establish some better phrases that we can use for ourselves, right?
Okay.
Because if we're telling ourselves bad thoughts, which often those thoughts are on replay over and over and over throughout the day to day to day, and we want to start reframing those. So, for example, I'm working with a woman right now, and she wants to believe that she's a really healthy eater, but she doesn't believe that yet. So we have to break it down into a step that is believable for her. So what she came up with is that she is being conscious of what she's putting in her body, and that she could believe. And so once that becomes her new normal belief, then we can take that step. Like it's sort of like climbing a ladder. Like we can take the next step on the ladder and have her continue to go into the direction toward that ultimate thing that we want her to believe, that she's like a really healthy eater.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of that gradual process. For folks that are looking to do something right off the bat on their own, one of the things that you can do is establish a mindful eating practice, but specifically under there, really tune into your hunger. So I teach folks, if you think about hunger on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 is like you're so hungry, you're starving, you're starting to get a headache. That's one extreme. And then 10 on the other end is you're super full. Maybe you're going to go lay down on the couch because your stomach hurts, right? We've all been there. Those are the two extremes. And in the middle, obviously there's a range 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8, 9, 10.
Right.
You want to live more in that middle range. Okay. So you don't want to be getting too overly hungry before you eat.
Sure.
And you want to stop eating before you get too full. Okay.
That's right.
So that's kind of that scale. And oftentimes people will say, okay, that makes sense. And then they'll come back to me a week or two later and say, but Andrea, I don't know my hunger.
Yeah.
And I said, that is very good. I'm glad you can acknowledge that, because we have been trained to lose those hunger cues. So this is sort of an evolution of kind of trying to evaluate. And it doesn't necessarily matter when you start if you're right or wrong. Like, it is subjective. You are right. You know where you're falling. But what happens is, if you're consistent doing that one exercise, over time, your definition of hunger and your definition of fullness changes because you become more aware of it. So you might start sort of like, I don't know what I'm doing. But if you continue to do it, you do feel more confident and more tuned into those feelings of hunger and fullness. So that's something that people can do just right off the bat on their own.
Wow. So what I understand from this process is that let's say if I know that I'm going to have breakfast with eggs and bread, and then every day I have eggs with, let's say, two breads. But I do know that the second one is an extension, and I am kind of full with the first. It is about accepting and understanding that I am full and I don't need to overeat with that second bread. It's
Correct.
literally that personal understanding and making your mind aware about it. Am I correct in
Correct.
understanding that?
And absolutely. And another piece is to do this in a non-judgmental way because
Yes,
we can, again,
absolutely.
we can be hard on ourselves. So instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't have had that other second piece of bread, it made me too full. Just notice, oh, I was full then.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe tomorrow I'll feel differently.
Right. And what do you think about this whole process of planning meals? Like I personally do that. I think unless and until I have my tiffin bag in my hand, I think all my friends and my family know about it. I always go around with this little bag which has something to snack on or whatever. What do you think about it? Do you think it works?
I
Does it help?
actually do. I think, in general, I think kind of the things that I was talking about, like so far, is probably honestly like 90% of the weight loss picture in my beliefs. But 10% are kind of those traditional things like meal planning and prepping your meals and choosing like healthy foods. I think that's probably about 10%. But when people are getting started, that is probably the key to set themselves up for success. And honestly, like there's so many other benefits to meal planning. I am a huge meal planner. I love the fact that it saves money, it saves time. I don't have to spend a lot of energy or like waste mind space on what am I going to make for dinner? Because I already know what I'm going to make for
Right,
dinner.
right.
So
Yeah, in fact,
I really encourage it for sure.
I totally agree on that because I think, earlier there was this joke in the family where people used to be like, oh, Khushbu's having breakfast, but she's already thinking in her head, what is she going to have for lunch? And then on my lunch table, I'm already planning or I know what I'm going to have for dinner. And I'm like guilty as charged because yes, I'm doing that, but I am so happy because that makes me feel so fulfilled when I'm actually eating my meals. And when people look at the plate, they are like, you're eating so much. But I feel like, no, I'm not eating so much. I am eating exactly what my body needs. And that's good amount of food. You cannot just have just, some squares of breads or just some small pieces of chicken and feel full, or just have a soup and salad and say, hey, my dinner's done. I don't see myself doing that ever.
Right,
So
right.
in fact, Andrea, I remember you mentioning about this whole 5 step process. Can you maybe enlighten us about that? Maybe that would help our viewers.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of times people are tell me, I don't even know how to get started meal
Yeah,
planning.
yeah, yeah.
So if you just kind of break it down into some simple stages, you
Hmm.
can kind of streamline the process for you. So first, you got to decide like, what do you want from your food? Are
Hmm.
you a vegetarian? Do you eat meat? Are you a pescatarian? Are you trying to manage high blood pressure? All of those things. Like that's kind of like the first point is just kind of defining who you are as an eater or who your family is as an eater.
Hmm.
Then next, people can be really overly ambitious and say, I'm going to make 5 new meals this entire week. And I don't suggest doing that, especially if you are new to meal planning and meal preparation. What happens is when you get over ambitious, then you uh, get frustrated because that doesn't necessarily happen. Things
That's
come
too
up.
much.
It's too much. Exactly. It's too much. And then take into consideration your schedule. So I typically work late on Thursdays. So I know that I don't have a lot of time on Thursdays to make much. So Thursday nights are really, really simple meals, usually like a 10-minute kind of prep thing, or we're planning to use leftovers. So take into account the schedule. I tend to do more cooking on Fridays and Sundays when I know I have more time.
Right.
So just take into consideration your life, your schedule, that kind of thing. It makes it a lot easier to set yourself up for success.
Wow.
And then using leftovers if you need to. So if you are using rice, for example, and you have 2 dishes that you're planning in the upcoming week that require rice, make them back to back and then only cook the rice one time and have it both nights, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And then the final thing is really, you don't have to reinvent the wheel week after week after week. If you make a meal plan that works for you, you can repeat that. You maybe not the very next week, but you can have that a couple weeks down the line, maybe 3 weeks down the line. And so the meal planning in general, if you're saving your meal plans, gets more and more streamlined and faster as you go.
Absolutely. I agree on this one. And I think a lot of people end up doing this where they try to do a lot in a very little time. And that's where they struggle with everything. There's already the struggle where you're trying to make yourself align to a new lifestyle, a new change of habit. And if I have understood the anti-diet approach, it is an approach towards a better lifestyle, a better habit. I often see a lot of people talking about the future. People constantly talk about the future, but when they're talking about the future, they forget that it is the habit of today that's going to really build the future. So the same process, I guess, is in this entire diet, where whether you are following the anti-diet approach or whether you're following the diet approach, it's important that you set the right habit, the discipline is followed. It may repeat itself again just to make it easy for ourselves, but it will be definitely fruitful and it will definitely give great results.
Absolutely. I could not say that better. For sure.
Andrea, I think, while I totally agree with you on a lot of things, I somewhere had lost my way also because of the pressure of work and eating and all of that. So it's so nice to hear this from you because it's really brought me back to my vision board of, okay, what are you doing? Stop looking at the other people and how they are looking and how their body is looking and what they are eating, because each one has his or her own journey. And what you eat is really what your body needs. And that's such an enlightenment. Thank you so much.
I love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrea. I think all these, enlightenment, all the answers that you have provided us today is going to really be helpful. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers as an advice, maybe that you would like them to follow just before we leave?
Yeah, I think that it's important for everyone to understand that you do have the ability within you to build the life that you want. And if it includes being a healthy eater or having certain health goals that you want to achieve, it is totally within you to meet that.
Yes. As an empowerment coach, I totally second that. I think it's all about making sure that you have that belief and faith in you, and then really let the entire world go to hell who believes that it should be done in a particular way. So do it
Totally.
your way and just do it fantabulously.
I love
Thank
it.
you so much, Andrea, for gracing our episode. I think we had a lot of insight. I personally have got a lot of insight that I'm going to try and follow. You've brought me back to the board, like I say. And it's really been really, really interesting talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
It's
And
my
for all,
pleasure.
thank you. And for all our viewers out there, I would just like to say thank you so much for being a part of our episode. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep tuning into the Khushbu Wed Show on Spotify. And for more updates and looking out, if you're looking out for an online program for anti-diet approach, please do connect with Andrea for the same. And I think I can totally vouch you will be in safe hands. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
everybody. Until next time, bye bye and see you.
Take care.
Take care.